Midway USA brand product designers have one straightforward goal: develop high-quality, technically sound products and deliver them to customers at reasonable prices. If you are immersed in the shooting sports industry and pay close attention to every single detail, you know our products are built right and stand up to everyday use. Who has shooting mats and range bag systems to hunting clothing and just about everything for the outdoors? Log on and shop 24/7 with super fast shipping. MidwayUSA.com.
Friends of NRA is your chance to support our Second Amendment rights and preserve America's hunting traditions. Join Friends of NRA at one of our 600 exciting events nationwide. From games to auctions and exclusive firearms, Friends of NRA events are your chance to support a cause you care about while having a great time with patriots in your community. Whether you're a seasoned shooter, an avid hunter or outdoorsman, or passionate about freedom, there's a place for you within Friends of NRA. Visit friendsofnra.org to find an event near you. Stand up for freedom with the Friends of NRA.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast, brought to you by Huntworth. Huntworth gear for all types of weather, all types of terrain, all types of budgets. It's clothing that just works. And right now, over at their site, through February 16th, they've got stuff that's clearanced out, 20 to 50% off on a lot of their stuff. Just going through there, one of the things that I noticed, that new Vertec pattern, they have those rain suits, each piece for $48. So a $48 rain jacket in that new Vertec pattern, certainly a deal. I really like that rain jacket. It's not necessarily one that's going to like save your life, but it isn't one of these tiny little thin ones that's going to get ripped on everything. Super durable. I've used it for, I think, like 3 years now, and it's worked well for me in the rain and in some really tough terrain. So $48, definitely something to check out there, as well as over at Latitude. They've got 20% off their entire site and 30% off their Method 2s, moving to that Method 3. So that Method 2 saddle, both the XL and the regular, like $210 for that Method 2 for an incredible 2-panel saddle, no metal on it, as well as that Maverick saddle for $160 at that 20% off. It's really hard to beat. Throw in pouch and back band, and you're just over $200, $203.99, basically, to get you started with everything but ropes and a platform. So if you're looking at getting into a saddle, if you want to upgrade, if you're looking for something maybe a little bit more comfortable, those are two great options on sale right now over at Latitude. We still have, so right now at Latitude, our code, none of the codes are working because they have everything 20% off anyways. But we do have a code. You can use code BHC to save usually 15%. So this is better anyway. Big Shot Targets. I forgot to do a giveaway for them on our quarterly giveaway, but Jason Nickel, he said he'd already had a bow case, so we're going to go ahead and put him in for that Big Shot winner for the giveaway, and you can use 10% code BCP over there, and those guys are incredible. Brandon and Hunter over at Big Shot Targets, and now Delta McKenzie, just some great dudes. Definitely look at their new stuff coming out this year. That block target that they've got, that's kind of like a price point target, is going to be an incredible target for the back of your truck for taking out of state, without spending, $200 on a target. And it's going to basically replace like those $100, $80 bag targets. So definitely check them out. Always, Genesis 3D, check them out. Kanadi, Zingers. I've been shooting Zingers for a long time. Just at the club, somebody was asking if they pop off, like when you shoot a deer, and if you had to run a wrap with them. He thought they were only used for like indoor. You can use the Zingers in any capacity. They stay on a little bit better if they have a wrap, but yeah, incredible lifetime warranty, great stuff over there from those guys. And what else did I have today for you? Oh, so this episode with Painted Arrow, talking with Nate. If you listen back to our ATA podcast, we were very, very impressed with some of the stuff that they have coming out, as well as, just kind of what they've done. So if you go right now to their YouTube page, they've got this wild hunt. He talks about it on the podcast, but they actually called in a helicopter, hit the SOS on their iPhone on accident, and had a helicopter basically come and try to rescue them while they were out there. And all this is, accidental and unbeknownst to them. So pretty wild. But in talking with them, they gave us a code BHC15. You can save 15% on anything at the Painted Arrow website. So definitely something to check out. Great guys, Michigan company, really down to earth, and they're actually hunters. Sometimes you end up with guys that just want to make a product, and they hunt a little bit, or they're, not really that into it. They're just more businessmen or kind of like nerdy product guys, and not the case with Nate and Devin. So definitely go check them out. Thanks as always for listening to all of our Patreons. Working on some new partnerships, some things coming up this year. Already looking forward to the Patreon hunt and all that stuff. So you can check that out at patreon.com/Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. But as always, thanks for listening. Enjoy the episode. All right, everybody. Adam back with another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. And today we're talking with Nate Hicks from Painted Arrow. And as we talked about on the last podcast, or a couple of podcasts ago, I guess, from the ATA show, it was a kind of smaller show, but one of the things we did get out of it was to spend a little bit more time with some of these companies. And it's kind of interesting because, Nate and Painted Arrow is a Michigan company, and it seems like there was a lot of Michigan companies, and the Michigan guys kind of gravitated together as they usually do. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then they put out just an incredible film. He was telling us about it at the show. And if you guys haven't seen that, go over to the YouTube for Painted Arrow and check that out. And we'll definitely get into that here. But how are you doing today, Nate?
Man, I'm blessed. I'm blessed today. It's a really cold day here in Michigan, but it's good. I'm good. I'm in the office, got a cup of coffee here, and I'm happy to talk with you today. So I'm excited.
So you had said to me earlier that this whole thing started about 2018 or so. And I want to get into that, but I just want to share, like, the first time I saw Painted Arrow, or I was introduced to the company or the brand, had to have been in that early days. And, the concept of filming from your bow is, been tried a lot of times and failed a lot of times. I remember back probably 2015, I built a angle iron bracket and put it on my stabilizer, and the cameras were terrible back then. When we were, I think we were past the time frame of flip phones, but we certainly weren't at the point where they are now. And I saw these guys at TAC, and they had a little pop-up, and there's a guy out there spinning his bow around, showing off this magnet thing. And then all of a sudden the bow goes flying and the stabilizer's in his hand. And we just kind of all looked and walked away. And that happened to be you that day, huh? So do you remember that?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was one of our first trade shows, probably the second or third that we'd ever been to. And if I'm remembering, that was probably in the 2020, 2021 timeframe. But yeah, that was like, we didn't have much of a pitch. We didn't have much of a, show display. We had a table and some glorified, we had buckets of concrete with posts, stuck in there that we were basically demonstrating our product on. But yeah, I was flipping around my bow. It's funny that you guys brought that up at the show, because I absolutely remember that because I was flipping it around on my hand, just, the days are long, right? And my bow slipped out of my hand and it fell on the ground, and everything was good though. Everything was good, but yeah, that's funny.
So from, like I said, kind of my experience with like starting to film and, we try, and it's just one of those things where it's this giant rabbit hole of, cameras and this, and the production gets so much better every year for these companies. I mean, our friends at Latitude do an incredible job, and it's like, you look at that and you're like, well, how can I do that? Or how can I do this? And so where did you guys start out, or how did this whole thing come together? And even from that, from such a long time ago to now, like, there had to have been a lot of ups and downs because this concept is not necessarily a novel concept. It's just doing it right. There had to have been a lot of ups and downs and hard, like, it's tough to keep going. Like, perseverance is key in this game. So, where did the whole thing start for you?
Yeah. So originally, Painted Arrow was one of those like passion projects. I worked for a corporate company for 6 or 7 years right out of college, and I started Painted Arrow as a media platform. As I had a podcast, and at the time, I didn't really have much of a direction. I interviewed honestly anybody that I could just talk with because I was very interested in a lot of things. I've always been extremely interested in bow hunting. It's something I've done since I was a young kid. But I would interview, I interviewed a dog sledding expert, turtle expert out of Florida, different conservationists, land managers, just literally anything that I could scratch the itch, just trying to learn. I was a young guy out of college, and it kind of that started in 2018. That's when I originally started that. And my best friend, Devin Cole, we're co-owners in Painted Arrow. We're 50-50 partners. And he and I had always, been really good friends in high school. We played sports together very young, in grade school. I mean, fifth grade, we were playing on the same basketball team together. So we kind of went our separate ways in college, and we were both very entrepreneurial minded, always talked business, always talked hunting. We fished a lot, and we got together, and it was kind of at the time where I was like trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life. And he had this idea for the Mag Pro, which is our number one selling product. I actually brought it here because I figured we'd talk about this, but this is like our number one product. And he made, kind of getting back to the core of your question on filming your hunts. It's like, why is always a thing. Like, why do you want to film your hunt? Is it because you want to grow your YouTube following? Is it because you want to have a memory? Is it because you want to have more intel going into the blood trail? And specifically for the two of us, Devin and I, as bow hunting partners, I guess for lack of better words, that was really what we were interested in, is like, hey, if we can get a little bit more intel after making a shot, going in, everybody's had those situations where you go in too early, you jump a buck out of a bed and you don't find him. And if you would have had any idea, any clue of where you shot him, maybe you would have played the cards a little differently. And so, to keep a long story really short, that product, we called it originally the Mag Mount. The Mag Mount was the name, but for trademark purposes and different things, we changed the name to the Mag Pro. But anyway, like, that product we made for ourselves. There was literally two in existence. Devin's background is in manufacturing, and he's an engineer, and he had this idea and made a couple of these brackets, and we both started using them. And that was just kind of like in the background. We were still both working full-time jobs, not a lot, of thought going into the actual product. Had absolutely no intent at all to make a business out of it, had absolutely no intent to, sell them at any level. But we had enough people after getting footage for ourselves, like, hey, that's really cool. How did you get that footage, and where can I get one? And so it kind of came to an obvious point where I was kind of like, I was in corporate America and I was kind of getting burnt out, and I wanted to switch up things and really wanted to monetize my podcast, monetize what I was doing. I didn't have a product. I didn't have anything to sell. I just had passion, drive, and energy, and those types of things. And so basically we took, the model hasn't really changed a lot since the first ever rendition. But early on, we had a really small magnet platform, and now it's much more beefed up. Like it's super strong magnet. Like you're not going to have issues with your phone falling off. But we took these. I think we took 150 to a trade show in Michigan, up in Grand Rapids, the Hunting Time Expo in 2021, and we sold out on the first day of the show. And that's when, we were kind of like, holy cow, like this is incredible. Like it's very powerful. People, we found this need for ourselves to want to be able to just go into the woods with a very, very minimalistic approach. I don't want to take the camera arm. I don't want to have all this setup. I don't want to take all these things, but everybody has that right there in their pocket. It shoots in 4K, and it's like, I don't have to really do a whole bunch. And, we struck a chord with people, and we had a lot of conversation around like, man, this is genius. It's super simple, but it's genius. And we, like I said, we started at that trade show. We sold 150, and fast forwarding, I'm giving you the really compressed, condensed version here, but fast forwarding, we've just always tried to listen to customers. The first question we got, even off the bat, was like, "Hey, do you have one for a crossbow?" Right. That was the first question we got. Like a lot of guys in Michigan, Wisconsin, like they're using crossbows. And so we've slowly developed a product line. That was our second product that we ever came out with, we call it the Mag Pro X now, as in crossbow. And we just listened to customers at trade shows, messaging with people, and like just developed this product line. And 3 years later, now we have, over 20 SKUs. And we've really found a niche within the hunting industry with, making it super easy and affordable to film your hunt on a budget and get that intel that you wouldn't otherwise have going into the woods. So that's in a nutshell kind of how we've gotten to the point that we are. And there's a lot more detail in there I can share if you want to go any which way with it, but that's really how it started.
Excuse me. So in that, like, what is your, like, where were you guys like as hunters starting out? Because I think that, I mean, just saying that you wanted that intel and you were talking about like tracking bucks into beds and all that stuff kind of leads into that. But, sometimes, and I just had a conversation with one of the guys who's bringing some new tech into the hunting space. And I had the conversation with him, is like, sometimes you have a guy that's like, for lack of a better term, like a Sheldon Cooper type guy. Like they look at it from a manufacturing standpoint. They look at it from this marketing standpoint, and not from like the hunter's perspective. So for you guys, like, what is your background in hunting?
Yeah. So my grandpa Hicks is the guy, and my dad, obviously my dad and my grandpa were the two big influences in my life. I would say it seems like I'm meeting a lot of guys recently that are, they didn't have that foundation in the family, and they became hunters later on in life, which is fine. But I strongly feel that like having a mentor is one of the biggest, it's one of the biggest impacts you can have to get on the hunting journey. And for me, that was my grandpa and my dad, right? I started when I was a really young kid. We always went sucker spearing on the creeks locally. We would always go hunting. I was more of I would say from a young age, like a shotgun hunter in Michigan. That was really how it started for me. But I have like my first memories were, I would sit between my grandfather's legs on a stand that he hand built. He had like a bucket that he would screw to the tree stand, and I would sit between his legs. And those are like some of my first true memories. We would do a lot of deer drives, walking through the woods. Before I could even legally carry a gun, they'd send me to walk through the thick stuff and try and kick something up. That was honestly how I grew up hunting, like very mobile in that aspect. And then I picked up bow hunting. Nobody in my family really bow hunted. I figured, kind of took that up on my own. In what year would that have been? I was in my high school years, probably junior, senior in high school. And I got a bow from a guy. It was a Clearwater, which is a brand that's not even currently manufactured. It's an old bow. I still have it. It didn't, I'm a pretty tall guy. I'm like 6'2", 6'3". So the draw length for me, I think it's a 28-inch draw, and I'm actually like a 31. So like I was like shooting this bow that was really tiny for me. But I remember one of my it was my first or second outing ever with a bow. I harvested a doe, and that was I would have been in high school, so 2012 timeframe. But I was immediately hooked. I mean, just like that was one of the first times I'd been able to hunt in the earlier season, right? So I remember I was like, I painted my face up, and it was warm outside, like a totally different chance. And ever since then, I mean, I've got into traditional archery. I've got into just about everything there is. I love tinkering with bows. I love everything about archery. And like I said, I mean, Devin and I, that was like really what connected us as guys, as dudes. Um, and it's something that we did every year together, right? I mean, it's just, as you grow, you listen to more. The media has been super helpful for me. Just listen to podcasts, you learn so much. 10 years ago, I'm not an old guy by any means, but in the last 10 years, the media for hunting content has gone through the roof, and there's just about everything you could want to find. You can find it free on YouTube, through podcasts, through ones like this. And that's really been my journey. Just digging in and learning things, talking to people, that's really how I've grown my bow hunting career. But, it's been super rewarding. We've always looked at it like we're bow hunters first, right? Like we're one of the few companies that feel like that we make it a mandatory thing. Like if you work for the company, you get a handful of days that you have to go hunting, right? You have to go out and hunt. And it's really cool to be able to do that, right? I mean, and we also have like I think there's like 2 weeks every year in November that we don't work because we're bow hunters first. And that's why we started doing this. It's because we're really passionate about it. And yeah, I mean, it's been extremely rewarding to be able to meet people within the industry, talk to people who are just flat out better hunters than you are, and just learn and soak up. I'm sure you can, resonate with that a little bit. Like that's really a big piece of the journey is the relationships you make along the way, and just learning how to become a better bow hunter, and understanding habitat, and understanding how deer use the landscape, and how you can improve habit, like all of it. It's just, there's so much. And I would say that we're not like we don't just get our bow out a month before the season. Like this is something that we truly invest in year round. I mean, we're blessed to have property, and be able to tinker and manage and do harvest of timber projects, things like that. So I'm kind of rambling, but that's really, where it started for me was shotgun hunting. I picked up bow hunting on my own, and it's been like this. So, I've been fortunate, I think I would say.
So you talked about like the media company, or like kind of like what you had kind of started out or thought in talking about like when you started bow hunting, at that time, like you said, you're not an old guy by any means. So you were kind of, as YouTube and all the things, like those things existed when you started hunting, and for like the media company and things like that. When did filming like come into the picture, beyond just trying to like get that like recovery shot? Like, because I feel like, we all see this stuff, and obviously that's why we're doing what we're doing today, is like we aspire to be like, oh, I want to do that, or I want to do that, or I think I could do that. It'd be so much fun. So when did that come into play for you, and what have been the evolutions of that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that's the why. You're asking the why. Why do you film? I had absolutely no interest in filming. Well, I take that back. Once you start trying to film, right, you see the camera arms and the buying the camera. I mean, we have a bag. It's a pretty big bag of stuff that we've accumulated over the years that is obsolete now because we're using our products and using our cell phones. But like originally we wanted, like, the true purpose for trying to film was what happened, like what actually happened in that moment. And I still struggle with it today. I mean, buck fever is a real thing. Like I get so jazzed in the moment, and I like my heart rate, the whole adrenaline, like I love it. I mean, I absolutely just crave that. It's like a drug, actually. It's like that big buck coming in and he's like everything about that moment building up. It just fires me up thinking about it. And like the true why of, like, I originally bought a camera arm. I think I bought a Canon. Oh man, what was it? It's a big thing. And I screwed it to the, end of the camera arm, and it soon became very not fun. Like just, I hated it actually, because it's loud, it's cumbersome, it's heavy, it's a lot of stuff. And that was the first time I think we tried to film the hunt, and it was hard to do by yourself, extremely hard to do by yourself. You felt like you always needed the guy there to do it for you because it took away from the experience. I'm sure if anybody has tried to do it, they're resonating with something that I'm saying, but that was really the start. And it was like it was one of those things that, again, Devin had the original idea, but we were both kind of in the same boat because we did a lot of hunting together, did a lot of things together like that. And we're like, man, wow, this has got to be easier. There's got to be an easier way. And again, that's when we kind of had like a light bulb moment with the phone. It's like, this thing shoots in 4K. I mean, it's like, it's the cat's pajamas. It does everything you could possibly want. We use it for everything. Why not hunting? And how can we make this extremely simple? And that's when the magnetic idea kind of came up. And we just kind of ran with it. You know what I mean? Devin's story, if you asked him, he had a dash mount on his truck, and he kind of like threw his phone up there. And it was just like one of those things like, oh man, we should try this. And he called me, and he made it, a couple prototypes, and we started running them. And I remember we had a really powerful moment. This is before, any trade shows or anything at all with actually selling the product. Like there was nothing to sell really. It was just this idea we had, but we had a moment where he's running one, I'm running one, I'm on my property, he's on his property. He had a deer come in, and in Michigan, if you're a Michigan guy, like big deer, they're definitely around, but they're just few and far between. He had one of the biggest buck encounters of his life. And, he's calling me. We would typically do that. Like, hey, I'm going out on Friday. I'll go out on Friday. We can like be together in different zip codes, kind of hunting. We would call each other, text each other, like, what are you seeing? That kind of thing. And he's filming with the Mag Pro, what was then the Mag Mount, and I'm filming with the Mag Mount. And he filmed this encounter with a giant buck, and it ended up getting killed by the neighbor. It was like 170-inch county record type buck. But anyways, he never ended up killing it. But he called me on the phone, and he was, blabbering like a fool, like, oh my gosh, you should have seen, I just had the biggest buck come in. That just goes back to, like what I'm trying to say. Like it's one of those tools that we found very, very handy early on. And so did he. And that's kind of like, I remember being a very pivotal in our minds of like, this is a really useful thing. Like, this is very useful. It's handy. We're reliving the moment. If he would have put an arrow on that deer, he'd have been able to see within, a very good margin, like where that hit was. And it really was like a spark to our brand. So that's really what we tried to market towards recently, since the beginning of our story, is recover more game. Like, you're taking this thing in the woods with you. If you can get any amount of footage, it's better than having none at all. Right. And there's a lot of tips and tricks how to get the best footage using the Mag Pro with the cell phone. And we can get into that if you want, but like, you can tell, I mean, on certain videos, I have a whole library and archive of really cool videos of my own, of other people that are sent in that we use to break down hunts and show like, here's what we would have done in this situation if we would have been hunting. Like, this is what I would have done. And all we use is a phone. So that's really the evolution for me personally. And I would say, for Devin as well, like that was kind of the trajectory of wanting to film and our why.
Yeah. And, I think that speaks to, a lot of guys, and definitely our listeners and myself as well. I mean, the last podcast I put out, we were talking about like the fatigue of filming a little bit. And, at the beginning of the season, you're all jacked up, and especially like if you're out of state, and especially like we'll get into like some of your videos, but like if you're say elk hunting, or you're on one of these 7 or 10 day hunts, it's all well and good until things start not going well, or you feel like there's nothing to show. You forget about the story, and you think about the hunt, and you start to get frustrated, and why am I doing this? And the bigger the gear is, right? Like if you have to set up a camera arm every time, if you have to set up a tripod, if you have to, if you're toting around another thing, another set of batteries to manage, all of that stuff, goes out the window if your why is to, share your hunt, right? Or tell a story. It's one thing to just, and I know there are a lot of guys who just want to get that shot on camera so that they can see where that lit knock went or what happened or how the deer reacted. And that's very important, as far as, a great tool. We think about some of this stuff probably as like vanity, right? Like, oh, I want to show everybody, cause I can tell you a lot of the things that I've filmed, like bobcats or, just like owls, just really cool stuff that we as hunters get to see that, you try to explain to somebody and they're like, oh yeah, whatever, that's cool. But like, no, it's, when you see a bobcat who walks, because they're stepping in a puddle and they're shaking their foot with every step or walking across the log. I mean, as hunters, that's stuff that's just freaking amazing that we get to see like in nature that people, don't, it's really hard to explain to people.
Yeah.
And that journey, as far as hunting for most people, starts with that camera arm and these visions of grandeur. And then it, falls by the wayside and they've got a bag full of stuff that's obsolete because they just, they're kind of over it at that point. So bringing that the cell phone into it. Now for you guys, do you use any other cameras or anything else? Or is it just the camera, like just your cell phone for, I don't want to say like for like marketing purposes, for proof of concept, or is it because like you just don't need it?
So that's a great question. And we've kind of created like so we have a full-time media person on staff. Trav is our media guy. But we have videos on our YouTube page, like are all cell phone. I mean, the whole video, we just did an hour and 10-minute documentary of a Colorado backcountry hunt with nothing other than iPhones. And it was primarily my iPhone because I wasn't the guy actually, I didn't pull the tag specifically, but there was a couple, pieces of the film that were maybe from my brothers who was on the trip with me or Devin's phone, but it was all iPhone footage. Typically on some of our deer recovery videos that we do. So like the intro, like, hey, it's July, not July, it's November 5th and we're going in the woods, and that's all done with an iPhone. The shots shot with an iPhone on our product. And then typically what happens is we'll call Trav. He's usually on call and be like, hey, we just got a deer down, and he'll come with the bigger camera rig and film the recovery. Right. And we definitely have a rig that we film on our, with our phone as well, so that we can have that content and use it. And it's sometimes much easier to transfer footage using an iPhone because you have the AirDrop, things like that. But yeah, he'll bring in a bigger camera and get the recovery, for lack of better words. So walking up on it and the storytelling behind that is typically how we've done it in the last couple of years. But there are many exceptions to that. If he's out or whatever, we've had number of films now that are just completely all iPhone. And it's not because there's a piece of it that's like, yeah, we're trying to show the products off, that kind of thing, but it's just handy. I mean, it's easy, right? It's like, that's why we have all these products. This one right here, this is our micro arm. I did a full backcountry mule deer hunt in Utah, the high country, this last August. And I did the whole thing filming with my phone, this phone right here. This is an iPhone 14 with this product and then the bow mount. So I had these two mounts and I filmed the entire hunt using these two products. And again, it's just one of those things. It's if you can't afford to have somebody come with you, a lot of the times, like in the tree, right, you don't want to have another guy. It's easier to not bring a guy if you can just do it yourself. And you were kind of talking about the cumbersomeness of I mean, there's no doubt about it. I'm biased. I really am. But in my mind now, it is absolutely ludicrous it's not fun at all to film your hunts with a big, heavy camera and an arm. Like, it is not fun. It's not fun at all. It takes away from the experience. But if you have something that is super simple, like a GoPro or a phone, where it's like as big as your fist and it's already going with you anyway. Like, why not? Why not hunt with your, why not film your hunt? So that's really where I landed. Is if we can make it super easy, like dumb easy for somebody to go like this and put the phone onto a mount and just press one button, like, why not? Why not do it? So, again, I'm rambling, but that's really where I'm at.
Yeah, last year I kind of did a bunch of that with just my phone for like the interviews and some of that type of stuff, and then the Insta360 because it's like all encompassing, like it just it's like that backup thing, and then to be able to tell a story. And I think that's great. I was like combing your website, and at the show I was looking to see if there was like a magnetic mount for the Insta360, because that's one of the things that is frustrating to me, is like it's on an arm. Like I shot 4 deer this year. 2 of them I didn't get on film. One because my camera rolled off and was on the ground when I shot, and then the second one was, it was just too far away in the tree and I didn't turn it on. So like I think that something like that coupled with the Mag Pro like is kind of like a no-brainer. For I would say what 99% of guys are trying to do. So let's talk about your documentary in Colorado, because you were talking about that at the show, and you're like, oh, it's going to come out. It's filmed all on the iPhone, and you guys had some success, and there were some interesting things that happened there. So and I definitely have some questions around that. But talk about like the hunt, like from its inception. Like, what have you guys been elk hunting before? And what was, like you said, you guys didn't all have tags. So what was the plan going into it?
Yeah. So if you guys are listening, and you just want to sit down, this is an hour and 10 documentary. I mean, I've never been a part of a hunt that was more exhilarating. And I started elk hunting in 2018. I did my first ever, this is before I had kids and everything, but just literally picking a spot on the map, Colorado, second rifle. I did that 3 years in a row. And on the third year, I was finally successful. Just literally DIY, picking a spot up in the backcountry in the wilderness. And I would, 3 years in a row, I went to the same spot. I had encounters every year. Didn't know anything about anything. It just started going hunting. And that was all with a rifle, second rifle season, over the counter tag, Colorado. Got one down. And I always have really loved, I wanted to move to Montana for a really long time. My college internship was with the Montana Fish and Wildlife. And I moved out there for a summer, worked with the fisheries department, fell in love with the Western stuff, just the landscape, everything. It was just, I was called to do it. And I thought I was going to move out there with my wife after college, and things happened, and COVID happened. A lot of weird things happened, and we ended up staying in Michigan. But like I would say one of my true passions is exploring rugged wilderness areas, like straight up. And not just public land. I like that, but specifically wilderness areas where it's like horse traffic and foot traffic only. No e-bikes, nothing, just like remote designated wilderness areas. That's one of my passions. And I've done a handful of hunts now. Every year I'll go on 2 to 3 hunts out of state, backcountry. Everything's on your back, going in rugged, not knowing a lot. I don't have a high success rate, but I love going to new spots. And I think if I started to keep going to the same spots, I'd probably have a lot more success. But I just love exploring different mountain areas. So like I like to be able to look at a map and be like, oh, the Uintas, I've been there. I know exactly what that looks like. I've smelled the air there. I've slept on a couple of hillsides over. Like, I love that. I love being able to say that I've been to those places. And I'm getting off track here, but that elk hunt was a culmination of things coming together. I really wanted to see my dad shoot an elk, right? Because I've had these experiences. He went on one of those trips with me, and he didn't pull a tag. He just went to support me. My dad's an older guy. He's 62 years old. I wanted to see my dad shoot an elk. And then Devin has been going out west a couple of times. He's been on a couple of archery hunts, chasing elk in Colorado. We've been on a couple mule deer hunts together in Wyoming. Like we've been kind of doing, he hadn't had any success yet. So my dad and my co-owner, Devin Cole, my best friend, he pulled a tag. And then myself and my brother, Al, all four of us went on this hunt. And this was the first time that we didn't do like the super hard backcountry DIY. Like my dad was coming. I wanted to like get him into the zone without burning him out, right? I didn't want to have to hike 6 miles to get into an area and have my dad just be gassed and not be able to hunt. So we spent a little money and did like a drop camp. We met an outfitter at a show last year, and I wasn't really interested in like a guided thing, but like it was very appealing to me to like get up in the mountains on horses. They drop you off and then they'll come and get you in a week. Like you're doing the hunting, they give you a couple pointers, like, hey, we've seen elk over here before, that. So that was the route that we took. And we started back in the summer documenting, going, there's a place down the road that we would go and shoot. We both were shooting, I guess my dad and Devin were both shooting the same round. It was a 7mm Rem mag. And it was first rifle elk. And we went on this hunt and didn't know really what to expect because we'd never done the horseback thing, never had done the drop camp, had never done anything like it, not in this area. And so we went out there. I don't know how much you want me to talk about this hunt specifically, but a couple of things happened that were just crazy, right? I mean, we had a really tough go of it with the weather specifically. Usually in October at 10,000 feet, it's 20 degrees, like no questions asked. It's not uncommon for a big snowstorm to come in. And we had 70-degree days every single day, which is wild. And some of the outfitters, you were telling us like, it's a family owned business. They've been doing this for 50 plus years. It's a 3-generation type company that's owned this outfit. And they're like, guys, I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be tough hunting. It's going to be tough hunting. It's 75 degrees some of these days. Like it's going to be first thing in the morning and last thing in the evening, but don't expect these elk to be moving midday because it makes perfect sense. If you're not a hunter, like they got their winter coats on and it's 70 degrees in the mountains, they're just not going to be moving. They're just not. So with that in mind, we just put our best foot forward and we're up in the mountains. We didn't see any elk for the first 2 days at all, like nothing, not even a hair. And so like, everybody's kind of naturally down, but I've been on enough of those type of hunts to know that like it can happen. It can happen right now. Like you have to be ready every step because especially with a rifle, like you could just be creeping through the timber and anything can happen. It seems like every night there's a reset. These elk can move so far in a night. And so I was trying to preach that to everybody. Like, guys, I know we're not seeing them, but like, just be in the game because it can happen at any moment. And of course we were seeing moose. We saw a bunch of mule deer. We saw bears. We saw about everything but elk while we were in there. And on day 3, we had a really, really nice bull, like one of the nicest bull by far that I've ever seen on public land, right in our zone. And my dad and I saw him. I think he was bumped by another hunter, but he came kind of down in this drainage and we were kind of freehanding, like I was trying to get my dad set up, trying to get him a shot, and it didn't end up working out. But my brother and Devin were on the other side of this crevasse basically. And they were over there and this bull was going right to them. And they ended up finding this bull, couldn't get a shot off, but they went and kind of like stalked in and where he went and bedded in this timber. And long story short, Devin had butt dialed on this journey down to get closer to this bull. He'd butt dialed the SOS on his cell phone, which if anybody is familiar with an iPhone, if you hold the 2 side buttons like this, if you can see that, this way, if you slide that button, like if I were to do that right now, I'd get a phone call within minutes, seconds from 911. Like, hey, we just got a notification. Is everybody all right? It would happen immediately. And so, of course, we're in the middle of nowhere in the backcountry. There's no signal, nothing like that. And so we didn't know it until after the hunt, but Devin had got a bunch of phone calls from 911. And he didn't know that he'd called, this SOS whatever. And so in Colorado, they, they did, like, they saw where we were, where the pin came from, and they sent a helicopter and into the backcountry. And this helicopter, so like we like knew where this bull was, and so did, it's like both parties. My dad and myself were out hunting one area, and Devin and my brother were hunting another area, and we had radio check-ins every day. And so we both had communicated at our 11 o'clock call, like, hey, we saw this bull. Did you guys see it? Yeah, we saw it. We ran down the hill. We're waiting for it all day until it comes out in the evening. And all of a sudden, we see this helicopter come in, and it starts circling for like an hour. It circles this basin that we're in for about an hour. And finally, this thing lands. And my dad and I, we had no idea. We had absolutely no idea that this helicopter was coming in, for our crew. Like, we had no idea what was going on. And so we settled down for an evening hunt. We kind of had another area, and all of a sudden, coming up the mountain is my brother and Dev. And they get up to us and they're like, you guys won't believe it. We're like, what? And they're like, dude, we called that helicopter and from our phone. And we're like, no way did you just call that helicopter? And like, it was the most crazy thing. And literally the funniest thing about the whole part is where this bull was bedded, this helicopter comes in and literally lands within 50 yards on this opening on the side of a cliff. They put the helicopter down on this spot and blow the bull out. The only bull we've seen all week, right? It's just crazy. I mean, there's something that you can't write. And Devin, if anybody knew him, he's very, like, he was very embarrassed. Like, he didn't take that lightly at all, and it was a big blow to him. His mental, mentally in the game, like, he was just out of it. He's like, dude, I am so, like, done. I want to go home. Like, this is ridiculous. He was extremely embarrassed, and rightfully so, right? But there's nothing he could have done. It wasn't like it was his fault. And you should definitely go watch the video. There's a lot more detail surrounding that. But long story short, that ends up happening. It was a 5-day hunt. On day 4, it's our hottest day by far. It was literally 80 degrees, like actually 80 degrees. We're in t-shirts, sweating, like heavy sweat. And we're up for an evening hunt. And we have this, there's a big sow and 3 cubs, black bears, that we saw multiple times throughout the week. And we were sitting in this spot on day 4, and we saw these black bears come out of their cave, like across the canyon. And we knew exactly where they were bedding, right? They came out of a den. It was just like very obvious. This is where these bears are living. It makes sense. We're seeing them all the time. And these bears start coming around. They're coming all the way around, like following the same, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, there's the trail on the same elevation that we are. So we're on the other side of the canyon. These bears start working right to us. I mean, right to us. And to the point where we're like, these cubs were like going everywhere, right? They were kind of like going to get berries. They were climbing up trees, and just like mama was like on the trajectory right towards us. And these bears were kind of going everywhere. And the last thing that we wanted to happen is one of these cubs to kind of like squirrely off to us. And then all of a sudden, oh, hey, we're in between mama, right? Like, it was going to be a bad situation. And so we started to kind of like, just like not leave the area, but like, let's just make a little bit of space, because they're going to be popping out of this timber at about 100 yards. And we don't want to be in the situation where we just didn't want that to happen, basically. And so we're bear watching, we're living the dream, right? It was incredible. And we're starting to kind of like pick up our stuff and just move down mountain a couple 100 yards just to put some distance between us. And as we're moving down mountain, Devin sees at the very top of the cliff, like at the very, very top of this cliff face across the canyon, he sees a flash of something go through this timber. And so we're glassing that spot, and sure enough, we see the butt of an elk, which is like, we're not leaving now. Like, this is the second elk that we've seen all week, and we have no idea what it is. We don't have any idea if it's a spike, if it's a raghorn, if it's a cow, it's a fawn, or not a fawn, a calf. And so we all of a sudden just stop. We make it probably 50 to 75 yards from where we were sitting, and we lose sight of these bears because we're focused on these elk, or this elk. And for literally 40 minutes, we're sitting on the side of this cliff, super steep elevation, just in this rock pile, like a shale field. And Devin's got his gun set up, like, I mean, his gun's facing straight up basically. And finally we can start to see this bull start to move. We're calling at him. We're calling at him. And all the while I'm like trying to make sure that there's no bears coming, you know, like, so it was like one of those things, but we sat for 40 minutes and finally we saw antlers on this thing, but didn't know if it was legal or not. And if you've ever been in the mountains, I mean, it's like, it can be really patchy, right? So like we can just barely see this elk. We can see his mane and his coat and its yellow rump. And finally, like there's like a little patch where we could get a shot, and it was 420 yards. And we'd never really shot that far, especially on this elevation, one of those things. And we've been sitting there for 40 minutes now. So we're like kind of settled in a little bit. And finally, after 40 minutes, we first can identify it's a legal bull. Like after 40 minutes of sitting there, and in Colorado during the season, in this specific area, it has to have 4 points on one side or a 5-inch brow tine, one or the other. And you got to be sure, because if you're not sure and you put something on the ground, like that's a game violation. Like it's a big deal. Like you need to make sure it's legal. And so for the longest time, there's this video that I think it's primetime television, because Devin and I were going back and forth, and we're, you know, you can see us kind of, that's how we talk to each other in real life. We're cussing at each other. And like the moment was heated. It was a heated moment for sure. And this bull finally comes out, and we got like this little window, and then they're going to tuck into the other side of the timber. And I'm like, oh, he's legal. He's legal. And he ends up shooting this bull at the very top of the cliff, drops the bull right where he was standing. And it was just this moment of like overjoy. Right. And we captured all that on our phone, on this phone right here. The whole thing was filmed on that phone right there. And it was super cool moment, because for me, it was like the first time that I got to personally like be the guide, where I was like, I wasn't hunting, right? I'd never had experienced that. I've always done like these things where I'm by myself, or I'm out just trying to do it on my own. And I've never like had the sole goal of trying to document the experience, as well as get my dad and my best friend on a bull. Like that was the sole mission for me. That was the whole week. I'm just like, no kids, I'm away from work. And it was like, I really enjoyed that role, is what I found, being the guide. And I was just overcome with emotion. And so was Devin. And there was tears, there was laughter, there was cussing. And that video, I'm really proud of it. It's edited by Trav, he's a master editor. And we took all this cell phone footage and just chopped it up and made it a documentary film. And it's out right now, and it's pretty cool. I think that anybody listening would really enjoy it. So I don't know if I talked too much right there, but that's what happened. And it was an incredible experience for sure.
No, it's a super cool film. And a couple of things. I mean, I think the one, the main question I think people are going to come away from it is, so, I guess if you elk hunt or you go into the mountains and you have your inReach and all that stuff, and that's your emergency beacon, they always warn you, if you push this button, there's going to be costs associated with your rescue. So what happened? What was your communication like after the fact? Like, do you get a bill on your Apple thing that's like $20,000 for the helicopter, or what?
So believe it or not, Devin would be much better at explaining this, but so basically the encounter, like these guys landed the chopper and like ran down mountain, and these guys end up like talking at the bottom of there's drainage. There's like a creek, and they're like talking like in the mountains. And I think the air medic said something along the lines of, this is a state funded thing, right? You won't be charged anything. There's no fee. And I think it's specific to the state of Colorado. So I wouldn't assume anything for sure, but I know for our specific instance and the time frame in this year or whatever, that was a state funded thing. And they had shared that they had been on a couple of those outings where it's like a false call. I have a Garmin inReach, the Mini, and there's that button under there that you click, and that's exactly what it does. It sends to the local towers, and everybody's going. And coming out for a search and rescue, but we were not charged anything. We felt really bad. We made that pretty clear in the video, I think, like, hey, look, we're not mocking these guys or anything. This is not something that we wanted to do. This is not on purpose. We felt really bad about it, but I think just, if you are listening, like, it does give peace. I guess the silver lining is it gives you peace to know that, like, hey, I mean, if you are in a pinch, I mean, that works, right? I mean, that's a real thing. I do know that the newer iPhones, I can't speak to Androids because I'm an iPhone guy. But I do know that the new iPhones have like satellite communication, which is pinging off the same towers as an inReach Mini. So I would definitely do some research on that. If you're listening and you're like, interested in buying an inReach or whatever, the newer iPhone, the 16, I know for sure. And I think if 15, if you have the update, it allows you to just satellite communicate via text with your contacts and your phone, which is huge. That's a huge thing. So yeah, that's kind of what happened for us.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was looking at, and I was like, oh my God, I can't imagine like the cost of this and if it comes down. And when you were talking about that interaction, like going back and forth with the bull, for the listener, I was watching it and it was, it was just on in the background, and my wife was like, what's going on? Like it was your interaction together like was captivating. Like she sat down and like she's like, well, now I need to see if they get it or like what's going on. So he's not overselling it by any standard. So you had said that you'd done that kind of stuff and had some success, kind of like the DIY type thing. For the guys that were with you that hadn't, what did they think of the pack out? So I did a similar elk hunt like that, and we are successful. And for me, like being able to break down an elk, and we broke down 3 of them, was like worth the price of admission, right? So to be able to like, it sucks. And in the moment, there's a whole bunch of chiefs and, not enough Indians, and everybody's going back and forth on what you're supposed to do. Because you guys are, I would imagine you're not experts at it. So it's a big animal. It's frustrating. So what was the overall consensus of like breaking down the animal and packing it out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And there's actually a big piece of the story there that I think is worth sharing here on the podcast that we didn't necessarily show a bunch of on the video, just because there's a lot of non-hunters in the world, and we didn't want to fuel the fire for non-hunters. And it's crazy because when we first started doing this whole film thing, like, again, everything that we've done from the very beginning has been like, we're going to be raw. We're going to show it exactly how it is. We're not going to sugarcoat it. This is what happened. We're not going to go back and film something like this is what happened. But as I've kind of, like, I never would have told anybody like we would crop pieces of a video out. We're just going to show it. Like, I never thought that, but we did crop specifically after the bull is on the ground. I don't know how to explain it. The videos don't capture it good enough, but like, we're on a cliff, like more than 45-degree angle cliff. And this bull gets hung up on a log, and we're like literally, I forgot to mention this, 100 yards from the bear den. Like, that's where this bull died. Mama, 3 cubs. They're like, we last saw them like not terribly far from that whole thing. So we're up there. We get to the top of the mountain in the middle of the night. It's dark, right? It's pitch black. Devin forgot to bring his headlamp, so we got a headlamp. We didn't have our packs. We weren't really prepared. I know that sounds funny, but like, I had my day bag. I had a game bags. I had knives. We had the tag, obviously, but we didn't bring like our pack, like our hauling packs. And part of the outfit was like, you get the ball on the ground, they'll come in with the horses within reasonable distance of a trail and like get it out for you. That's like kind of like a nice perk. But like, we're at the top of the cliff, and there's no way you're getting a horse up there. You're not getting a band of horses up at the top of where this thing went down. So anyway, we get up there. It's dark. We take photos real quick, but it was like the moment like immediately turns to, man, we got a lot of work ahead of us. There's a lot of bears in the area. We got to get this thing processed and back to camp as soon as possible. And my dad and brother weren't too terribly far from where we were. We made a big push up into this drainage where we hadn't spent much time. And so like we were able to radio them and be like, hey, can you guys go back and get our packs, meet us up, where this bull is. And they were kind of seeing these bears too. And we were communicating at some point, like, hey, do you guys see these bears coming out of the cave on the other side of the face here? And so they kind of had an idea of where this bull was. They didn't know, but just follow the headlamps, basically. Follow if you can see my headlamp up at the top of the mountain, that's where we are. And so they went back to camp, which was not a small journey. Went all the way back to camp in the dark, all the way back out, and brought some granola bars. They brought our frame packs, and they brought fire, which we really needed because I had a lighter, but like we wanted to start a fire while we processed the animal because we're just tons of bears around. Like we didn't want there to be any issues with safety. So they end up meeting us, but so we're on the top of this cliff, right? We tagged the animal. There was literally no way that we were going to process this animal where it was. It wasn't. If we would have moved it any which way, it was going to just go. It was just going to go straight down mountain. So we had this plan after kind of talking about it, like, let's tag the animal. We're going to cut his head off. Okay. We're going to cut the head off, save the antlers. Cause if this thing rolls, it's going to destroy the antlers, I think. So we cut the head off of it and we scooted this thing just a little bit. And this elk rolls down mountain for probably 400 vertical feet. Just going. I mean, just going. And it was the best move. It was an MVP move for sure, because we got down towards the bottom of this. We were, kind of dragging it at the end, but just trying to get to a semi-level playing field where we can quarter this animal out, process it. And to your point, like the work's just starting. Like anybody who's done that, like an elk is not a small animal. A bull elk is not a small animal by any means. And it just takes time. It really takes time. And we were all kind of on edge, right? Because of a number of reasons, but it got, despite it being like 75, 80 degrees, with the way that the thermals were sucking at the bottom of this drainage, like it's cold. It's really cold. And your fingers, like it kind of got heated. And like you said, a lot of chefs in the kitchen, everybody's wanting to get it done. I actually, one of my first jobs out of college was, I worked in turkey processing. I was one of the evisceration managers. So there's the department. Basically, we gutted all the birds, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of birds. And so like, I've always kind of liked the processing thing. I've always processed my own deer. Like I had I've done an elk before. I knew what I was doing, but still it doesn't make it easier in the moment when you're like, you got a headlamp and it's everybody's cold and hungry and like a little stressed and there's there was just like this moment of like anxiety, I guess. And, but we ended up getting it taken care of. It was much easier with 4 guys because my dad and brother end up, meeting up with us, and we process the animal and we're all taking, semi-equal loads. And then, you're just going on a death march back to camp. And we end up, putting a meat hanging pole up between 2 pine trees and just hang the meat and, pray that bears don't get after it. And we were lucky enough that they didn't. And yeah, the next day and a half or whatever, the pack crew comes up and they load it up and take it down, which, man, it would have been near impossible. I think, if we would have actually hoofed it up to where we were, like walking ourselves rather than on horseback, I don't know how, it would have been days. We would have had to take 2 loads. There's no way we would have been able to get all of our gear and the elk down mountain. We would have had to like quarter it out, deboned even further than we did. But having the horse was like, that's huge. That's a big deal. So, but yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of makes a little bit more sense for the film, because there was that one point where he's walking down with the head on his back and like you guys hadn't processed it yet, but it wasn't like communicated. And I'm like, what the hell are these guys doing? Like, that's the last pack that you're, and yeah, so that makes a whole lot of sense. And for as much as I think we on the show and guys want to like romanticize the like DIY type stuff, like you can do it. And there's guys that do it all the time. And it's, I would imagine, I haven't been successful with elk doing it. Probably incredibly fulfilling, but for all the things that you just said, like, it can be very dangerous. It's tough. Like, I think those spike camps are kind of like the best mix of the two, because you're able to get into the animals without killing yourself. And then you already have a lifeline to kind of get the stuff out, to get the animal out when, so it's not just that big shock of like, oh, now we got to process it. And then it's like, oh, now we got to pack it to where? Like, I think that's kind of like the balance. So I think you guys do a great job of showing that, and both the camp side of it as well as the hunting side of it. So it's really cool. I think everybody should definitely check it out. And if you get a chance to do a hunt like that, I would recommend it. I think, for you having been successful DIY and this way, like what were your thoughts versus the two?
This will sound funny, but I really enjoy I've played sports in college and high school. Like, I love the physical demand that is required for those types of hunts. Like, that's part of it for me. It's like you really do, on the DIY aspect of it, where you're doing it all, you really have to love the suck. Like, truly. I don't think anybody who's done that, you just have to enjoy being uncomfortable. And for me, like, twice a year is great. Like, it's that tough. Like, you have to mentally prepare all summer, hack, get your body in shape. Like, you have to do it. I mean, you absolutely have to do it if you have any hopes of actually pulling that off. And I like that aspect of it. I like the difficulty. I like going into the remote areas. I like that. And a lot of people might say that they like that, but it's tough when you get to that moment. I will say though, as I'm, as I'm becoming a father, as I'm, have a business, I have a lot more responsibility directly on my shoulders. I did enjoy the spike camp aspect of where like an outfitter is actually dropping you off, because you do burn a lot of energy sometimes getting into an area. And I guess there's a couple ways of doing those types of hunts, where you're either like kind of, in your truck, kind of truck camping, and like you're being a little bit more mobile, where you're making like a day push here, back to the truck at night, day push in this area next day, down back to the truck at night, kind of doing like, you can be more mobile that way, but you're not going necessarily as far in. But like that style that we did, you're all in. Like, you're going in, and this is where you are, and this is your area, and you can hunt wherever you want, but if you kill something, you just know you got to get it back to camp, right? So there's two ways of looking at it, and there's pros and cons to both. And I think the real con to the hunt that we just told the story about is, like, you kind of are like you're hunting a zone. So there's no elk there. There's no elk there, and you can only go so far in a day to the point where you're willing or able to actually put a bull on the ground. But I do kind of like both. I think going forward, we'll probably do some of both, just depending on time, depending on a lot of things. But I did enjoy like showing up on day one on the opener and feeling like fresh, right? Because usually you're burning a ton of energy mentally, physically, just getting to your location. And then you're kind of like tired and you're out of breath because you're not used to the elevation and all that. But I do think I do like both. It's hard for me to say like I like one more than the other. I will say that in terms of me guiding, like being more of like I'm not pulling a tag, it was more enjoyable on this hunt where you're dropped off with a horse. Your hunters are fresh. You're maybe not in the best shape. Like my dad, he's 62. Like, you can only be in such good shape to be able to continue to do those things. And that's kind of my goal this next year. I don't know if it'll happen this year, but maybe next year, 2026, we'll probably do a similar type of hunt. And I really want to see him put a ball on the ground. That's a huge goal of mine. So,
yeah, no, I can totally relate to that. My father-in-law, he shot his first elk this year, and he got it with a bow, and it was a really long time coming, and very emotional, and super cool. And I mean, nothing can compare to that. It was really cool being able to be there. So for you and for like Painted Arrow, you showed us a bunch of really cool stuff, that you guys are working on and things that are coming out. So what's next for Painted Arrow going forward?
That's a good question. We are really going to try and lean into, from a media aspect, into more video. We think that we've really not done a whole lot with YouTube. We didn't have much of like a strategic plan or any type of structure at all, but we typically use YouTube as like a landing place for all of our product breakdown videos that we link to our website, things like that. But as we grow, I think it's really valuable for people to see kind of like the behind the scenes. Who are Nate and Dev? Who are we? Like we try and just be ourselves. That's really, we've always leaned into that. Like we're not trying to be somebody that we're not. And that's going to be something I think you see a lot more from Painted Arrow. Specifically, we're actually editing it right now, but I live in about 70 acres in Michigan, and it's a long story, but basically we just did a huge logging project, and all with whitetail habitat in mind. And so we have like a 12-part series that's about to release on our YouTube channel of like the whole process from day one, just looking at the woods. We had a logger come out. We've had conservation folks come out. We had big, heavy equipment on the property. Like it's a 12-part series of just like how to manage a property in terms of logging with deer hunting in mind. We created, I think 5 or 6 acres or so of like tillable land. So like huge project. I mean, cutting all the trees out of 7 acres and digging up all the stumps with an excavator, like huge project. So that's going to be coming out. You'll see a lot more like media content in terms of visual video content coming from us, which I'm really excited about because it's fun to do. It's really hard to do while you're actually manufacturing product, but it's worth it, I think. And it's like stuff we're doing anyway, but we're just going to make a bigger push to actually show it. So that's something that's new for us in terms of the products, which I think is what you're going to. We have a lot of cool stuff that is coming. Okay. I can't share everything. One that's a really easy one to talk about that we've teased on our website now for a couple of years is our shot mag, which is a magnetic mount for your cell phone, for your shotgun. And we've been testing this very thoroughly for the last 2.5 years. We've had multiple revisions, dozens of revisions. It's really hard to get it. Like, I'm pretty sure God made it near impossible for somebody to magnetically attach their cell phone to a shotgun, just with the amount of recoil that comes with it. But we got something that we're really, really excited about that we're going to be releasing at the NWTF show in Nashville here in February. That's going to be the first time that anybody's seen it, that we release it. We've showed, I think you might even saw it at the show. We were showing some people like just teasing it, like, hey, this is coming. And that was like one of the final prototypes, but like we're getting production ready, getting packaging ready, putting that in boxes. We have a lot of cool, I just think creative things. That's really been what we try to lean into, is the innovation of it. Like, how can we make it super easy for people to use magnets and filming and just easier ways to hunt? And so basically, if you look at our website, a lot of the things are kind of like world's first, right? There's not a lot of other folks that are creating what we're creating, and we're specifically trying to lean into that and be really niche with it. So I can't talk about a lot of the new stuff, but I mean, we just released this guy here. This is just we call it our spike stabilizer. It was just one obvious addition for our Mag Pro. Like, a lot of people ask, like, what stabilizer should I be running with my Mag Pro? And so it was like an obvious addition for us to come out with one. There's nothing that's like super groundbreaking in terms of technology on this, but it's just a really nice carbon fiber tube. Fits really nice. It's a 19 millimeter tube on this, which seems to be the perfect fit for the Mag Pro. So when you mount it on your bow, it just works really well. Works with the foam on the bottom. So that's new for us. But yeah, I mean, if you guys knew what I knew, in the next 12 months, we're probably going to release somewhere between 1 and 5 products. in that time frame, and they're all super useful, world's first, never really been seen before, that is coming, and it's specifically towards mobile bow hunters. So it's very exciting.
And so for people, what's the best place to kind of find these new products or to follow along when they're dropping or whatever? Because there's one that you showed us at the show that you were working on that I know we were very, very excited about, and that shotgun mount, the footage, the video from that was incredible. Not what you would expect from a shotgun and kind of what we're used to seeing, even from like some of the Tacticams and other things like that. It was just much smoother. But you have a product that I'm waiting to see. So where's the best way to find out about these drops?
Yeah. All of our products, paintedarrow.com. If you just search paintedarrow.com, that's like where everything is. You can, readily get. But if you're just like wanting to be top of mind, like what is Painted Arrow doing? I would say Instagram is probably the best way to keep track of us. We do have a TikTok that we're kind of trying to figure out TikTok. It's a whole beast in itself, but Instagram, you just search Painted Arrow. That's a good way to follow us. And then YouTube, like I said, we're going to try and do a lot more on there. So it's fun. We've seen a lot of success from a lot of those different platforms, and it's just trying to figure out, like you said, how to get in front of customers. But I would say Instagram is probably like the one that we're like on almost every day, showing things, that most people might not see otherwise. So
awesome. Well, I really appreciate you sitting down, and for everybody out there, go to their website, go to their YouTube. You got to see those videos on YouTube because it's pretty wild. So thank you for coming on today.
I really appreciate the time, and if there's ever anything that somebody listening you need or you want to chat, you can just easily get a hold of us, message us on Instagram, or send an email in on our website. There's easy way to connect with us, contact us, and we love feedback, we love hearing comments, all that. But I really do appreciate the time and putting me on. And if there's anything you ever need, let me know. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Nate.
Gear up for the hunt and learn from the best with Deer and Deer Hunting Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern on Waypoint TV. Tune in every week for expert hunting tips and unforgettable moments in the field. Waypoint TV, your destination for outdoor entertainment.